This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
To the highway in a brand new day. Over the rainbow, gotta let it go. So far. Fast to freedom. Stars tonight together. Here everyone is singing. 你看到我就怕，头皮发麻，我的手。
Welcome back to Open the Voice Gate, Rewind and Rewatch, episode 16, covering DGUSA United Finale that took place on January 30th, 2011 from the Ace Arena in Union City, New Jersey. We are members of the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. You can find us on the Voices of Wrestling podcast feed or on the dedicated Open the Voice Gate podcast feed on all podcast platforms and applications. You can find us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate. I am one of your hosts. It's your old pal, Iron Mike Spears, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Case Lowe. And Case, we finally have some gosh darn tag champions at the end of this show.
I guess if there was a positive to leave this show on, that being the United Finale, it is that we have tag champions now. As for any other positives from this particular show, we will see if we discover one as things go along.
It is a interesting show. I had one match that would have been notebook bound, but
yes, I have one as well. But God, this show will take a different tone than even the last show we talked about, which I thought was surprisingly great. That it was one where I wasn't expecting a ton from it, and by the end of it, I was like, you know what, that was professional wrestling the way I like it. This show, we will see if I feel that way by the end of the episode.
Well, it was professional wrestling, but I don't know if it was how you liked it. So
it was certainly wrestling. I will give it that.
So this is the end of DGUSA's first ever triple shot. Of course, they were in New York City at BB King's on the 28th. They were at the ECW Arena on the 29th. And this was their big debut in New Jersey at the Ace Arena. But before we get to it, Case, we have a bunch of stuff. Like, we kind of partitioned everything out here, knowing there's going to be 3 shows that were over 3 days. But there was a lot of stuff that happened. So this time, we don't have as many notes here, but we do have a big event to talk about before we get into the show itself.
Yeah, I thought we were going to have this nice compact show. It's going to be quick. And then right before we started recording, Mike was like, oh, wait, do you still want to talk about the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards? And I was like, I do. I forgot about that in my planning. So I think it's important to realize just the overall perception of, I think in 2010, it's fair to say the Observer Award voters were still representing that hardcore bubble, even if it bleeded a little bit into the casual fan base and to maybe a different portion of the online community. It still represented the hardcore bubble in a way that I don't necessarily think the awards do now. So it's worth talking about where Dragon Gate and Dragon Gate USA finished in the 2010 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards. These obviously were released at some point in January of 2011.
The print date was January 24th.
Exactly. So right in line with our timeline, this worked out well. So we can kind of, Mike, I don't know how you want to do this, but take it away.
So after last year, 2009, where DGUSA and Dragon Gate were all over the awards, we're starting to see, like, at the time, this was a very much the peak of Dragon Gate awareness, at least within the Wrestling Observer electorate and readership. I think that it changed over time, where there's not necessarily as many people watching Dragon Gate for a multitude of reasons. But I think like a big example of that is just taking it from the top. So Luthez Ric Flair Award, the Wrestler of the Year Award. The winner this year was John Cena. Number 2 was Takashi Sugawara. And then number 3 was Masato Yoshino. Other people of note, and people we've talked about a bunch on the show, that placed on it. A surprising Prince Devitt was 4th. But Davey Richards was 6th. And then honorable mentions are Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, Naruki Doi, Yamato, and BxB Hulk. So Masato Yoshino finishing third against John Cena and Takashi Sugiura really tells you like a state of where the wrestling industry was at this point, considering that like you have Cena, Jericho, The Miz, and then Kurt Angle this time was in TNA, but those were your WWE people there. And then you don't really have a big New Japan person. Like Devitt's your top New Japan person, which is wild for 2010 in my mind. Then you have Shinsuke Nakamura at 7, and then Takashi Sugiura as like the Noah guy as number 2. It's kind of a wild thing. And then Mystico finishing at 10th when Mystico is about to, I believe, and I'm really bad about this time period and Lucha history, so I apologize to the Lucha historians here. Finishing in 10th, where I felt like that he probably could have made an argument in this time period of being a consistent Wrestler of the Year candidate.
I think this list, if anything, is just a huge indictment on TNA.
Yeah.
Because Kurt Angle finishes 9th in the top 10 for Flair Thez, but, this is what WrestlingBay.tv, I think this is the era of online streaming we're in. Pure DVDs are still a thing to an extent. And you've got Segura, Yoshino, Devitt, and Nakamura. I can't think of a match Nakamura had in 2010. And you've got that representation in your top 10 for the most important award, which in terms of just diverse Japanese representation in these awards, I can't think of a time since where 3 companies have been featured so prominently. And this is obviously without any All Japan, because I feel like a lot of the awards now, it's, New Japan dominated, and rightfully so. And then Dragon Gate typically gets a fair shake and the Observer Awards, despite the one time that T-Hawk finished as one of the best flyers, which still confuses me.
Oh, we have a wild one this year for this that we'll talk about.
But it's, you might get an All Japan guy if it's Miyahara. I know like 2015, like Big Japan had a really big year with Western fans that year. Like Big Japan was a hot product, but I don't remember it bleeding into the Observer all that much. Like there's a Daisuke Sekimoto Shuji Ishikawa match that I had as one of my 5 best matches of the year. I gave it 5 stars, but if that finished on the match of the year voting for Dave's piece, it was an honorable mention. It wasn't a top 10. So to see this award in particular, 3 guys from 3 different Japanese companies finish in the top 10, 4 if you count Devitt, it's really impressive. And the honorable mentions is loaded with Dragon Gate guys.
Yeah, and there was a quote about Yoshino in here where Dave says, Masato Yoshino, age 30, is a 10-year veteran whose trademark is that he's probably the fastest wrestler in the business when it comes to movement. Yoshino was more well-known in recent years as part of the Speed Muscle tag team of Naruki Doi, but Yoshino held the Dream Gate title for most of 2010. So pretty surface-level comment from Dave there. He does go in talking about like how interesting this was, that a lot of strong candidates, and the thing is that true candidates were limited, and Sugiura finishing 2nd really tells that story and talks about Major League Promotions, the lack of success at that time, which drastically would change by the time DGUSA is over, limiting candidates, and with WWE wrestlers winning the last 4 years following a 4-year period where every winner was based outside of the United States, tells the story of an ever-changing business. And that's a pretty important note to keep in mind in this series. Most outstanding. So Dragon Gate proper guys, we had Shingo Takagi in 5th, Yamato in 4th, people who were affiliated with DGUSA at one time or another. Daniel Bryan winning the award with it was a close match with him, but he had 269 first place votes with a 2,037 overall score. But Davey Richards had almost 100 less, or over 100 less first place vote. Sorry, not 100, 70. Eyes, Mike. So 70 less first place votes, but only finished about 165 points behind him, which is kind of wild.
It seemed like Davey was on virtually every ballot in 2010 for most outstanding, which rightfully so.
And then Shingo finishing 5th. I think that if you talk about in-ring match work, at least in DGUSA, he was probably the top Japanese native there, which made sense. And then Yamato was still this was during his Dreamgate run, and then, he finished out the year. This was after voting, but he would soon be the Freedom Gate champion. So it makes sense that these 2 guys were the ones representing the company, though. 2010, I think you have to give the in-ring MVP and Dragon Gate to Shingo.
Oh, I don't think there's a question. Yeah, this is Shingo's year. He dominated this year. had not the main event of Kobe World, but had the most important match at Kobe World, was the focal point for pretty much every DGUSA show in terms of, what is Shingo doing on these shows when it came to the foreign talent. It's his year. And weirdly, only a blip on the radar in Shingo's great career, but 2010 in a vacuum, I think of Shingo when I think of this year.
Yeah, I think that's, head and shoulders above everyone else. Feud of the year, the only DG-related thing was Hulk and Takagi finished in 7th with 11 first-place votes and 402 points. Runaway candidate, and really 10 years of hindsight, this was the feud. Kevin Steen and El Generico won the award. It was a runaway. This was, at the time, a category that also had MMA people. It was the only wrestling thing in the top 3, and the next wrestling thing was Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, which had less than a third votes as this. But yeah, Hulk and Takagi, that was such a big storyline. It makes sense there. Kind of sad, though, that we didn't necessarily have a DGUSA feud here, but really, the big feud you would have had, I guess, would have been like Kamikaze USA versus Chikari Sekagun, and that wouldn't rate up there. And then Jimmy Jacobs and Jon Moxley wouldn't be up there either, so it makes sense with this.
Yeah, I got no issues with any of this. Steen Generico, Hulk Shingo, and Rey Mysterio, CM Punk. Any year where you get those 3 feuds in professional wrestling, it's a good year for wrestling.
Funny note, LA Park versus La Parka finished 10th that year, which I think is just funny.
Oh, Lucha.
Yeah, that very Lucha thing where they had LA Park come into AAA fighting over the La Parka name. He won, but then La Parka still remained La Parka until the end of his life.
Oh, God.
Kind of peak Lucha. So tag team of the year, it was Kings of Wrestling, Hero and Castagnoli winning. Number 2 was Motor City Machine Guns. Number 3 was Beer Money. The Dragon Gate people and the people affiliated with Dragon Gate at one time. You had American Wolves in 8th with 2 first-place votes and 214 points. The Kamikaze team of Shingo, Takagi, and Yamato finishing right behind them they had one more first-place vote, but only 153 points. And oh, how has TNA hurt people? Young Bucks, Generation Me, were the honorable mention at 75 votes.
It's just embarrassing that they're only an honorable mention. It's just think about, and obviously I've thought a lot about it. I've got a piece on voiceofwrestling.com about it. Think about how great the Young Bucks are, and think about how they had years between TNA and then their, I guess, second Ring of Honor stint, the Cornette era of Ring of Honor, where they were just wasted. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable, but then you also look at the TNA talent that did finish 2nd and 3rd, and you're just like, why weren't they having great matches against those 2 teams all the time?
Why can't Beer Money just reunite? That's all I have to say about that.
I would be interested in that happening. Even if it's just like an Indies thing. I want to see the Boozer Cruiser. Come on.
I have always had a soft spot outside of WWE. I've always had a soft spot for Bobby Roode. I think his style of wrestling does not appeal to me, but I've always thought he was the best version of that, what I would call Americanized TV style of wrestling. I think Roode has had a bunch of really good matches. James Storm is someone outside of Beer Money I have no use for. I do not enjoy him. I have never enjoyed him outside of being Bobby Roode's tag partner.
Yeah, no, I'm similar there. Most improved winner was Sheamus, where I felt like Sheamus and The Miz kind of alternated this award for a while. Dragon Gate people, Akira Tozawa finishing 7th, which that's just because people finally discovered Akira Tozawa in my mind. And then Ricochet finishing 9th, which honestly, Ricochet, taking a look of just that 3-month period of him in Dragon Gate, he should have done a lot better. A couple funny names to touch on before we go on this category. Cody Rhodes was an honorable mention, as was Hiroshi Yamato and Kenny Omega.
Claudio Castagnoli, too, which is ridiculous. Claudio Castagnoli was one of the best wrestlers in the world coming into 2010. I do not understand that at all. Bobby Fish here finishes 5th, which should just be noted. I think that is, he was spending time in Pro Wrestling Noah, but I also think that comes from his Evolve stint at this point. And then, to me, it's, Tozawa went from being someone who could be very good to someone who was consistently great by the end of this year. But Ricochet just was in the beginning of putting it all together. And even like I said on, a few shows ago, you look at the Ricochet that was in the July 4-way match and the Ricochet that teamed up with Aries and Horiguchi against Ronin on the last show of 2010. And then, we've seen during this triple shot, the Ricochet that's here now, completely different humans in those 3 stages. And he is someone that will only improve as we go along in 2011.
Best on interviews will be like one of the biggest indicators that we were in 2010 here. Winner and a runaway was Chael Sonnen. Number 2 was Miz, almost had like a third of the votes, Chael Sonnen. Jon Moxley finished 7th, which, all things considered, that made sense. And then, interestingly enough, John Cena finishing 10th, Josh Koscheck finishing above John Cena.
I have no thoughts on the Koscheck-Cena rivalry that you're attempting to start here. I will say, I think it is a huge plus for Dragon Gate USA, and proof that to an extent, even if we see the audience dwindling, to an extent, the system worked, because you got someone like Moxley, who was not positioned to have great matches, but positioned to have great interviews, finishing 7th in a year where, it's Chael Sonnen, The Miz, CM Punk, Chris Jericho, Kevin Steen, Ric Flair. Those are the guys before him. Those are, at least in terms of the wrestlers, what I think is widely considered to be 5 of the best promos in modern history. And you got Moxley finishing behind them. They're doing all right. That's a plus for Dragon Gate USA.
5 of the greatest promos and The Miz.
I don't know for sure. I feel like Chael Sonnen's promos, especially because this is his first fight with Anderson Silva this year.
Yeah.
That's what won Feud of the Year. I feel like they age poorly. I'm not sure. I just have a feeling.
Yeah.
I just have a feeling they do not hold up.
Ugh. Yeah. So from there, we get into most charismatic. John Cena wins. Yamato finishes 5th. And ahead, and here's something that Dave writes in a caption: Yamato of Dragon Gate is charismatic, but there's no way he should finish ahead of most people behind him. People that Yamato finished ahead of: George St. Pierre, Josh Koscheck again, Hiroshi Tanahashi, CM Punk, and Chael Sonnen.
Good. I stand Yamato in this case. I'm all for this.
Like, the only person that I would say at 10 years hindsight should finish better than him is Tanahashi. The rest of them, can get in the bin.
Get in the bin. You heard Mike Spears.
Get in the bin, George St. Pierre. All right, best technical. We're going to go pretty quick here. There's not a lot of notes here. Daniel Bryan won. Davey Richards, our main man, finished 2nd. Mike Quackenbush finished 8th. Other people on this that are interesting: Doug Williams finished 6th. Naomichi,
big Doug Williams guy.
Oh, Chaos Theory is a great move. It still is.
Yes.
And then we had Naomichi Marufuji at 5th, which is kind of an eye raise there. AJ Styles in 7th. And Chris Jericho at 10th.
Yeah, the Marufuji thing is interesting because his whole thing in 2010 was he wrestled Devitt, and I feel like Devitt pushed him to do more flying than he had done in most years. The technical wrestling aspect of that is interesting to me.
Yeah, Devitt finished 3rd, by the way.
Yeah, the Devitt one almost makes sense because that I look at him as, I guess, the air quotes technical wrestler. The Marufuji thing, I felt like he was pushed to a different level that I wouldn't categorize as such.
Yep. Bruiser Brody Memorial, best brawler. Winner was Kevin Steen, and actually in a very close 2nd place. Kevin Steen had 70 more first place votes than Jon Moxley, but only had about 260 more points. Jon Moxley finished 2nd. Brody Lee finishes 7th with 334. Jimmy Jacobs finishes 10th. And Shingo Takagi is an honorable mention.
Yeah, this is a good showing from Moxley. I'm assuming most of his votes in this category are coming from CZW and WXW, but he still got a platform to brawl on DGUSA, and I think for the most part he did that successfully. And then, Brody is someone who I don't know if he ever had like that. Wow, like Brody Lee is a brawler in Dragon Gate USA throughout really his entire time in the company, but he's someone that I think because of the way he looks and his name and the way he works, I guess his size, he's always going to get lumped in this category.
Yeah. Dave does note that this was a 2-person race, as it probably should have been. And Jon Moxley was only 25 at this point, really made his name on DGUSA pay-per-view shows, and was probably the most pushed foreigner once they lost Bryan Danielson and Davey Richards. No shit there, Dave. Best flyer, and this is an interesting category because when we get to honorable mentions, we have some wild vote getters here. Winner was Kota Ibushi with 221 first place votes, 1,903 votes overall. Ricochet finished 2nd with 161, so only 60 behind there. but 1,591, so 310 votes behind him. PAC finished third with 120 first place votes and 114, or 1,149. God, I'm terrible at reading numbers.
That's okay.
Third place votes. Rounding out the top 10 of interesting people here, Devitt finishes 6th. Matt Sydal / Evan Bourne finishes 5th. Mascara Dorada finishes 4th. Number 7, Dragon Kid. Number 8, Rey Mysterio. Number 9, Jack Evans. Number 10, La Sombra. Let me tell you about the honorable mentions case. We have Aerostar. We have El Generico. We have AJ Styles. We have Volador Jr. Then we have BxB Hulk and Masato Yoshino.
You seem really fired up about this. I don't have an issue with the BxB Hulk inclusion at all.
Masato Yoshino?
Yoshino's a little suspect, but he's the Dragon Gate guy. It's just it's the Fighting Spirit Award in the Tokyo Sports category, in the Tokyo Sports Award every year. It's just like they'll give it to the Dragon Gate guy. Who cares?
It's just Yoshino, other than doing the missile senton and occasionally doing like a flying double stomp, does
and
not
like a nice house show dive.
Nice house show dive. That's all he does. He never leaves his feet. He's like he's the fastest wrestler ever to never do dives. It's wild to me. Like that's just,
I'm fast. Oh yes, go ahead.
It just drives me wild.
I'm fascinated by Ricochet finishing second here because Pac just had. I thought he had a better 2010. Ibushi is in the right spot there. I think he was the winner. And then, Evan Bourne, Matt Sydal, obviously Dragon Gate alumni, and someone who at this time it felt like there was something there with him in WWE, and for a number of reasons it never materialized fully. But yeah, no, I the Ricochet thing is interesting, but overall I think that's an accurate top 10.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Dave writes pretty good caption here. Ricochet is notable for finishing second as someone who was an unknown a year ago. Kind of tells you where Chikara and IWA Mid-South is in the greater scheme of things. PAC, an independent star in the UK who had worked in Japan and is scheduled to be a DGUSA regular this year, which will help his exposure. Mascara Dorado has knees problems that hurt him going forward. Don't think he ever really had knee surgery or anything like that. And then Evan Bourne had injuries and returns scheduled for March. He would quickly, I think, win the tag titles with Kofi Kingston and then would be out of the company by the end of the year. But challenged with it. So this is actually a pretty honest category, I feel like. Most underrated, Daniel Bryan was in the category as 9th. Kaval / Low-Key won that. Any big takes about the most underrated category? It's just what you expect. Even at this point, the most underrated people kind of are the same each year.
It's super 2010. It's Kaval, it's Christian, it's Evan Bourne, it's Yoshitatsu. 6th is Desmond Wolfe, 8th is Tyson Kidd, 9 is Daniel Bryan, 10 is Dolph Ziggler. That is super 2010.
Yeah, Kazuhiko Nakajima was an honorable mention at that point.
I saw that.
Yeah. Promotion of the year. Number 1 in a runaway was Ultimate Fighting Championships. This is when Dave likes still combining these things and for whatever reason. Number 2, Dragon Gate. They do not have separate between Dragon Gate and Dragon Gate USA, but Dragon Gate finishes number 2, but closely at their heels is New Japan Pro Wrestling. Ring of Honor finishes in 4th. Both those were the 4 ones that had more than 1,000 votes. 5 was WWE. 6 was my favorite MMA promotion, World Extreme. Cage Fighting. PWG makes an appearance as well as CMLL, Pro Wrestling Noah, Chikara, and then your honorable mentions are DDT and Big Japan.
I'm fascinated by Dragon Gate finishing 2 here, and the number 1 wrestling promotion at that, because I think 2010, in terms of, I'm counting this as Dragon Gate proper, Dragon Gate Japan, I think it's one of their weaker years. I think 2009 and 2010 are not strong years for the company. And the fact that, again, like I said when we talked about Flair Thez, the fact that TNA is not on this list is just embarrassing. In WWE, this is the year of the Nexus and those squandered opportunities. And I guess Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels in a match that I've never seen, but I guess that's a high point. But they finished 5th here.
Yeah.
It's not good for American wrestling. I think Ring of Honor, I like their 2010, even if it's hit or miss at times. But, Dragon Gate and New Japan, 2010 finishing as your promotions in the year is just embarrassing for American wrestling as a whole.
Well, speaking of Ring of Honor, they won the weekly TV show of the year. This was mostly their HD Net stuff. They would be off HD Net pretty soon. I think they were off in 2011. Ultimate Fighter finished 2. Raw finished 3. Dragon Gate Infinity, always the thing that always raised my eyebrow at that they finished so high. They finished 4. Top 5 closed out with WWE SmackDown, Bellator, New Japan, Superstars, AAA, and CMLL finished in the top 10. Impact was your honorable mention there.
Yeah, I got no thoughts here. I think this list is fine.
All right, worked match of the year. Of course, Dave did not separate most awards, but he separated shoot fights with worked matches. The winner was Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from Phoenix from WrestleMania. Tyler Black versus Davey Richards from Ring of Honor in Toronto will finish second. Bryan Danielson versus Shingo Takagi is your high DG representative at third. Fourth is BxB Hulk versus Shingo Takagi, the Caballero versus Caballero match from Kobe World. And then fifth was a match I rewatched this week, and it holds up very much to this day. Akira Tozawa versus Chris Hero from Bola and Reseda PWG from September 5th. Other DG matches that ranked high, we had the Mania Trios match was an honorable mention, as was Naruki Doi versus Yoshino. And that was it was Tokyo. That had to be the Sumo Hall match, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so those were your interesting and your highest rated work matches of the year.
Yeah, I just looking at my match of the year list for 2010 right now. I have Danielson versus Shingo at number 1. That's a 5-star match. Hero versus Tozawa, and Hulk and Shingo are my 2 and 3 respectively at 4 3/4. I have the Masaki Mochizuki versus Yamato match from 5/13/10. That's in my top 10. That's my number 7. And Yamato versus Doi from the aforementioned March 22nd show is my number 8 for that year. So I'm roughly in line with the Wrestling Observer newsletter, at least in terms of the Dragon Gate participation.
Yeah, and it's interesting with like that. Like you had 3 matches and 3 technically different promotions from DG finishing that top 5. Which
it's again. I mean, they were best wrestling promotion of the year. It's a heavy representation for them in these awards.
All right, now we go to Rookie of the Year. Adam Cole had a runaway. Number 2 was Green Ant. Better known as Silver Ant, and suspiciously the same body type as Tracy Williams.
Careful.
I mean, at this point, I feel like I can say that.
I wonder who ended up on the right side of history there.
Yeah. Number 3 was Rich Swann. Christina Von Ehre of 3 Dragon Gate appearances finished in 10th with 3 first place votes. Other interesting people on this. Fale finished 9th. Naomi finished 8th. Percy Watson finished 6th.
Oh yeah. I liked the Percy Watson gimmick on NXT when it was the game show era. That was fun TV. He was not good, but he was fun.
Yeah, Tama Tonga is in the top 5. Kazuki Hashimoto was 4th. A bunch of interesting names in honorable mention. We have Hiromu Takahashi and the man who would become El Desperado as the top vote getters that did not finish there. So interesting. Adam Cole at that time, I think like the path of history of the people who were classified as rookies. I mean, Hiromu Takahashi probably would be the other top rookie here. But Adam Cole, I mean, that does not seem unrealistic. And of course, Rich Swann at this time, that made perfect sense as well.
Yeah, the Cole thing, this was the start of his blue chip path to greatness. This makes total sense that he ran away with the award this year.
Yep. Best major wrestling show, which has a whole lot of MMA. So why do you call it best wrestling show here, Dave? The winner was UFC 116, their July 4th weekend show. Top wrestling show was ROH Death Before Dishonor with the Davey Tyler Black match. WrestleMania finished 3rd. PWG 7 finished 4th. And then DG appeared as 6th with Enter the Dragon. That, of course, had Shingo versus Danielson. Uprising, surprisingly, is the highest vote-getting honorable mention. And then Kobe Senbo Hall got votes as well did Mercury Rising.
A weird list of honorable mentions with the second Canada show, Kobe World, and then a Mercury Rising show that I wasn't that crazy about.
Yeah.
But Enter the Dragon finishing 6th, that's fair. I'll give that one to them. I mean, the Mercury Rising and Uprising were televised pay-per-views. More people likely saw those, so it makes sense. But I also just didn't think those shows were as good as the Midwest double shot from the fall.
Yeah.
And yeah, just a strange area there. That honorable mention list is really strange, but Enter the Dragon being top 6 makes sense.
I guess Milwaukee might not have made DVD in time, but I liked Milwaukee more than Mississauga or Mercury Rising by far.
Yes, that is a good point. We talked about that. I talked about that last week. Of those shows were pre-orders at the time, so I guess you're right. Nobody had seen them.
Yeah, Best Wrestling Maneuver is the only category that Dragon Gate won, with Ricochet with the double rotation moonsault. Number 2 was the label lock with Bryan Danielson. Number 3 was Justin Gabriel's 450. He did have a nice 450 splash.
It's a good 450.
Yeah, Devitt's Bloody Sunday was 4th. Kota Ibushi's Golden Star Press was 5th. The what would be soon called the British Airways would be called the Red Arrow, would be called the Black Arrow. PAX 360 Shooting Star Press finished 10th. And probably, like, given them time and exposure, it makes sense. But, like, in retrospect, great miscarriage of judgment, I feel like.
It's a beautiful move. It still looks good to this day.
Has he ever made it look bad?
No, he doesn't make anything look bad.
Yeah. Best Booker, Joe Silva of UFC won. Gato and Jado finished 2nd. Mike Quackenbush 3rd. Gabe Sapolsky finished 4th. Adam Pearce finished 5th. No Genki Horiguchi on this list this year. Do you think that people thought that, like, Gabe was also booking Dragon Gate Japan?
I don't think they thought that. I'm just wondering how psyched Gabe must have been when he saw that he got more votes than Adam Pearce and Hunter Johnson, who finishes there in 8th. Oh, Gabe had to be fist pumping. He just had to be so thrilled with himself there.
Absolutely. And those are the Observer Awards of 2010.
That mattered to Dragon Gate. So that is that. And then before we get into the United Finale show, there are 2 notes to make note of. One of them being a show on January 24th in Japan at JCB Hall, which I don't remember really any other show taking place there, but this is a show that was taped, that is floating out there somewhere. It is a beautiful building, and it is the Gaiora 20th Anniversary Super Fighting Spirit 2011 card. This had representation from Dragon Gate. It had representation from All Japan. There's a Joshi match here that I just don't know off the top of my head who they would have been working for at the time, but this is a crazy card that I'll break down. It looks like the Joshi stuff was likely coming from Oz Academy. But just to break down this card real quick, the opener is Bushi, Dragon Kid, and Power Pro Kaman, which is Sonata under a mask, defeating Kagetora, Minoru Tanaka, and Susumu Yokosuka. There's a Joshi offer match number 2. Match number 3 is BxB Hulk, Jinsei Shinzaki, and Tajiri defeating Kaz Hayashi, Nozawa out of the question, and Taka Michinoku. Yamato defeats Hiroshi Yamato. Kai and Shuji Kondo team up, and they defeat Naoki Tanizaki and Naruki Doi. We'll talk about that match more in just a second. Matsukazu motherfucking Funaki and Minoru Suzuki team with Masaki Mochizuki. That is a team of ass kickers there, and they defeat Akibono, Ryoti Hama, and Sumo Fuji.
Also a team of ass kickers.
A disgustingly large trio. And then the main event, it is Shima, Jushin Thunder Liger, and Keiji Muto defeating Masato Yoshino, Suwama, and the great Sasaki. Liger was a last-minute substitution, as the original person in this match was Tiger Mask 5, otherwise known as Minowaman or Ikushi Minowa. Man, I butchered that, but we'll go with it. Who wrestled Timothy Thatcher on a Bloodsport show. He wrestled one match as Tiger Mask 5 at the end of 2010, and then was never seen again until he was rebranded as himself. So Liger made this an official dream match when he subbed in. Mike, what are your memories of this show?
Well, like, obviously, like, the big thing was having a match at this time with Shuji Kondo going up against Dragon System guys. Like, that's enormous. Jinsei Shinzaki always had, like, a very positive relationship with Dragon Gate going to that, like, going from the past there. The match that I'd like to rewatch actually more with 2020 eyes would be the opener. You know, that's just like a really kind of wild thing. Like, I'm a big Minoru fan, and like him being on a team of Kagetora and Susumu Yokosuka is wild. And then Bushi, Dragon Kid, and the man who would become Sonata is kind of wild. And then, I mean, the real mean semi-main event there, where I feel bad for Don Fuji in that match there. But, whoo boy, like, this is interesting. I don't think JCP Hall exists anymore. I think it was replaced by the Tokyo City Hall show venue. So, like, that's
a shame, because I thought this place looked great on camera.
Yeah. No, it was like one of those places that kind of was a replacement in a lot of ways for, like, I know a lot of places would like to run there because it was right next to the Tokyo Dome and it was a little bit larger. So, yeah, no, it was JCP Hall from then to there, and then it was shut down. And it's just, like, small-scale sporting events that did pretty well there, and it did seem like it's kind of, like, replaced by, like, Tokyo City Hall. You know, like, that was, like, the big place that Wrestle 1 ran and no one else did because of how expensive it was. So,
The one lasting memory, I mean, the main event of this show is really fun, just given legends and Suwama,
Yeah,
legends of the industry. It's a fun match, but
and
the
Suwama.
Kai and Suwama, the Kai and Shuji Kondo versus Tanizaki and Doi match, which I didn't even realize until saying it out loud that Kai and Kondo were teaming up, and we just passed when we're recording this Kondo's debut in Dragon Gate. This match, up until Kondo's return to Dragon Gate in January 2019 when he wrestled Mochizuki, this was his only interaction with the Dragon Gate roster. He did not share any locker rooms with them. There were no Kensuke Office Diamond Ring shows where they bumped into each other. Whereas even Ultimo Dragon would find himself in that situation every once in a while, where he would be on some sort of freelance independent show and a Dragon Gate guy would also be on that show. There was nothing between Kondo and the rest of the Dragon Gate guys until this match. And Kondo and Naruki Doi in particular beat the living shit out of each other in this match to a point that it is almost uncomfortable. And it is beautiful to see 9 years later that things have been smoothed over and they have made up and Kondo is now a part of the company. But this match is violent and just stiff in a way that just most wrestling isn't. But it's a very fun match.
Yeah, and it was real acting out your feelings match, I feel like, at least from Kondo's standpoint. Because, as we're recording this is, the week after they returned, the week of his return to Dragon Gate. It just was such a bitter fissure there. And it was one that, really, at that time, the only person who tried to heal that fissure was Sugawara. And we know how that went. So
yes, unfortunately, we do know how that went.
Yeah, and it's also I know that you aren't a Joshi person, but this is a real status of where the Joshi industry was 9 years ago. That the Joshi match was Carlos Amano, Chikako Nagashima, Dynamite Kansai versus Aja Kong, Mayumi Ozaki, and Meiko Satomura. That is still some people that were holdovers from Gaia, really. And then of course you have Aja Kong this and this thing. So it really tells you if you were to do a Gaora 30th anniversary show, I know it'll be a thing where I know Oz Academy is on Gaora, so it'd probably still have Ozaki and maybe Aja Kong on there. It'd just be a completely different thing. That might be the most remarkable difference in passage of time there, at least from my extent there. But it's just an interesting thing. You see a lot of people on these shows that would commingle and do a lot of things other than Tsuji Kondo. So it was a remarkable show. And then I think it was 2 years later that it became the Tokyo Dome City Hall.
That's something we should, I guess, make a mental note in our head of if they're going to do a 30th anniversary show, because All Japan, there's no Kento Miyahara in the company at this time. It's again, Suwama's the guy that would make sense there. And there's no Wrestle 1 anymore, even if some of the Wrestle 1 guys migrated to All Japan, which is still shown on Gaora. It would have certainly been interesting had the anniversary, taken place in 2018, 2019,
right,
where maybe you get the Strong Hearts guys as Wrestle 1 representatives on a show with Dragon Gate guys. I don't think there's any scenario where they would have wrestled each other, but to be in the same locker room, as we talked about a few weeks ago with Shima and Shingo at Battle of Los Angeles a few years ago, even sharing a locker room seems to be pretty uncomfortable among those two camps.
Actually, it might be something that they do have Sendai Girl, so Meiko would be there. So, they've
got quite a few promotions now. I mean, again, they lost Wrestle 1, but it seems to be a pretty stacked lineup other than that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, maybe Kenji Muto's Pro Wrestling Masters might pull some names out of the bag.
Oh, but yes, maybe.
It kind of would be interesting because, especially as it seemed over the past few years, Dragon Gate's position on Gaora seems to be a lot more powerful than All Japan's, or a lot more dominant, I would say.
I think that's fair to say, yes.
So, yeah, no, that's a wild card. Just thinking about it is something that just kind of takes you aback.
And then from there, we go to the one Newswire update that I have, which was posted on January 19th, so a week and a half before the show, maybe 2 weeks before the show, where Gabe gives the current lineup for Union City, New Jersey show, United Finale, and says that there will be no more matches added to the card, as we need to see the events unfold from the prior 2 nights before we can properly book the third show. So what we were promised was Shima and Dragon Kid versus Naruki Doi and Ricochet, Masato Yoshino and PAC versus Chuck Taylor and Johnny Gargano, a no DQ match between Homicide and Jon Moxley, BxB Hulk versus Akira Tozawa, and a match that had Hulk retain the title in his first 2 defenses. He would have defended it against Tozawa. And Brody Lee versus Rich Swann. There's a bunch of names that are promised, but they were not booked up until the night of. And I think that brings us to the night of. This is United Finale, the end of Dragon Gate USA's first triple shot.
Indeed. And we take you to the Ace Arena in Union City. And my first note I have in my notes is this venue sucked. It looked very low rent. It looked very much like a place that Gay would run Evolve shows later, and just looked terrible for like a promotion that this, I believe, is their last pay-per-view.
They've got one more after this.
So
it's the Mercury Rising. Mercury Rising.
Yeah, we've gone over this. Sorry.
Yes, we have. It's okay.
My apologies.
So I hate this building for Dragon Gate USA. Now, there were Evolve shows in this building.
It makes sense for Evolve.
Yes, Evolve 7, not a great show. But Evolve 4, which has Danielson versus Fish as the main event, and this happened the night before the DGUSA 1-year anniversary show. It's a fun show, and it is an atmosphere that I think Evolve would have likely thrived in had they been given more opportunities to run there. I always think of this building with the CZW show that had Jun Kasai versus Necro Butcher, Daisuke Sekimoto versus DJ Hyde, and Drew Gulak versus a very young Zack Sabre Jr. on the show. They ran there in 2011, which might have been the last show in that building. I can't remember the last time somebody ran at the Ace Arena, but just big picture thoughts. The ring was too small.
It was maybe a 14-foot ring.
It was like a British rounds ring that Dragon Gate just couldn't do what they needed to do. It felt like the ceilings were low. I don't know if they were or not, but it looked like guys were afraid when they went to the top rope. And it just you think about the first show in Philly, and even with what I will call Gabe's production quirks, how major league that show felt. And now you're putting this show on pay-per-view, and I just wonder, and I don't know how the rights went. Maybe they weren't allowed to do this because you have to remember both New York and Philly, those shows aired on Go Fight Live. I do think, given the way this show turned out, which we'll talk about in just a second, perhaps it would have been more effective to show a match from New York, and then a match from Philly, and then, maybe another match from New York, and then the tag title match that headlined this show, the first United Gate Championship match. Maybe that is what should have composed the pay-per-view instead of just a edited version of this show, which even the way it stood, not something, had I paid for it at the time, I would have felt like I had gotten my money's worth.
Well, Dave does have a review of the show. And
okay.
One of the things he says is, he talks about this as a promotion that feels like, instead of being like authentic, great working Dragon Gate, is an American-style product with a stable of half Japanese guys and half U.S. Indies guys. It is still the Japanese who provide the highest quality of wrestling, although Austin Aries is at their league and everyone in the ring can hang with them. The negative is the same as you always have with this product, or ROH when viewed on pay-per-view. The production looks so minor league in comparison to major promotions. In this case, the ring mic wasn't always clear. The setting was tiny and the fans burned out early, which especially hurt the main event. While the execution moves was excellent, some of the matches peaked early and ended flat. So yeah, like if you would piece together parts of the United weekend, you probably would have a real solid 2.5 hours. That probably might be their best pay-per-view since the 1-year anniversary show. I mean, you could probably take a great tag match from each night, and then you probably would have to put on Yamato and Hulk just because you have to show the title.
It was
change.
a good match. I would put it on the show as well.
Yeah, but then you'd have Dai Fly versus Yoshino and PAC, and then you would probably also have the match with Dai Fly versus Ronin as your big two matches that leading up to it, and then you show the finals, and then maybe you show Tozawa versus BxB Hulk, and you have a great pay-per-view there. But that's not what happened.
Yeah, I agree, but we do not have that here. So, Mike, what kicked off the show?
So what kicked off the show, which did not make the pay-per-view, as I see from Dave Meltzer, was Brody Lee versus Rich Swann. Brody Lee won in a pretty fast match. It was 4 minutes long with the truck stop and a really fun baiting match. It was basically Rich Swann kind of just playing I'm the underdog guy. I'm much undersized. I'm going to try to use my speed and I'm going to frustrate him. Then eventually he got caught and he got laid out, and that was the match. And I thought that for that, it was a perfectly fine opener, and I felt like that Brody looked great, and I think Rich Swann played his role here pretty well.
It is a fun match. It is one where these guys, and I'm just discovering this with Brody, that Brody was just so good at this time period.
yeah.
And I really think was underutilized by everybody. I don't understand why this match happened, though, because Brody squashed Rich Swann, rightfully so, given, the stature of Brody Lee. But this was very questionable booking, and I think something that plagued the promotion as we go ahead. And it's the first big example of this that I can think of why this match. Like, what good did this do? Because, Brody doesn't have a title shot coming up soon, and Rich Swann is in the new focal point of the company. So what good does it do to just break Swann down like this when you've got so much what I would call extra talent on the show? I mean, Brody could have just beaten up Cheech, and it would have been the same match, but it would have been more effective.
Yeah, like, in the vacuum, this match was a lot of fun. But yeah, no, like, especially with how Ronin is, and this is going to be a thing we're going to be talking about, is Ronin as the American act that's getting over, but isn't booked like the American act that's getting over, and like the ones that crossed over when like you could tell how much he wanted to have other people over before Ronin.
And Rich Swann is really over in this match. Like, Rich Swann gets a better reaction than most of the people on this card. So to sacrifice him like this, I mean, I gave the match 3 stars, and it's like a 4-minute match because the work there was really good, but I just don't understand why it needed to happen. It was just a useless sacrifice of Rich Swann.
Yeah, no, it was something that, like, the way you described it totally makes sense there. But, like, yeah, like this. After the match, we had the remainder of Blood Warriors come out. Shima told Brody Lee to powerbomb him. Ronin tries to save him to no avail. Ricochet grabbed the mic and said that Blood Warriors were supposed to face each other, but they refuse to fight each other, and they're going to take the night off. The crowd, like, tried to banter. Like, this is, like, one of those early bad indie crowds that try to talk shit. But then Brody grabbed the microphone and said, like, to just hold them off. And then we had my favorite intro line. Did someone talk about Jimmy Jacobs? Which,
oh, boy.
Jimmy, oh, God. Considering, like, how grave a promo he was early in the promotion, he's turned into quite a terrible one as it's gone along. Have you noticed that?
I liked his promo stuff here. He was all over the show on the mic, and from what I could understand, because this is the first Dragon USA show where the promos are really hard to hear, unless you can think of another one before that. This was the one where I was trying to take notes, and I could not understand what they were trying to say. But from what I heard, I liked what Jacobs did on the mic here.
Yeah, he called them all bros. He called them cowards, and then Ricochet said, "All right, if you want this way, then we'll have an 8-man tag." And then Shima dunked on Jimmy Jacobs, telling him he had no friends.
It was very funny.
Yeah,
it was Roast Master Shima dominating the crowd with some sick burns.
Yeah, I mean, Shima being Shima. You know, it's not just native Japanese people who get dunked on the mic by Shima. It's others. The next match was AR Fox versus Cheech Hernandez. This was the first match on the pay-per-view. AR Fox won with, he might have a name for it. I think it might be called the Canoper or something, but it's a springboard codebreaker to one knee on Cheech Hernandez. And it's something where, like, this match was okay. It was 4.5 minutes, but I don't know. Case, you take it from here.
Cheech should have been a bigger star. That was my takeaway. Was this dude had a good body, and he was just different, and it just seems hard to believe that there wasn't a bigger spot for him on the indies at this point, on the indies 5 years ago, or as someone that could, like, contribute to an AEW Dark level show now. Like, I would love to know what happened, because it just seems like he got lost.
Yeah.
Lost in the shuffle at some point. And it's a shame, because, I mean, he looks good here. He and Swann both just kind of hit their big moves. And I think the big moves in this match look good. The in-between and getting to those moves felt very choreographed, very awkward. Not my thing. You can tell Fox is very early in his progression. So, I gave it 2.25 stars. It's the average professional wrestling match, or I guess the fine professional wrestling match. But it made me think about Cheech a little bit of, like, man, this guy had something to him that just never got capitalized on.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, like, Cheech had, like, a bunch of, like, really funny, like, workout stunts to begin with, but it just felt very kind of slow motion early. But it's one of those things that Cheech is, like, maybe it's part of the thing of him being, like, like an upstate guy, maybe Brody could bring him into AEW once they finally start touring again, and he might have had like an appearance there. But like whenever I've seen him like in AIW, I always think he's super solid. He just is one of those guys they just didn't seem to work out with. And yeah, AR Fox is really kind of, a little bit still needs to be left in the oven a little bit. Like he's almost there. He's almost there. AR Fox is, but he still is pretty green in that. After the match, we had an update in NYC since they assumed that people on pay-per-view wouldn't have seen the title change, but it was the Yamato title change, and that led to my match of the night, Akira Tozawa versus BxB Hulk. Akira Tozawa would win the match against the former champion, so he finishes the weekend at 3-0 with his captured German suplex in 20 minutes and 28 seconds, in a match that rarely Dave and I like line up on ratings. Dave gave this 4.25. I gave it a 4.25. I thought this was easily the match tonight and something truly exceptional.
I gave it 4.25 as well.
There we go. All three of us.
Yes. No, the powers that be. Before the match, Jon Moxley came out with Akira Tozawa, and then Reby Sky came out, and then Mox convinced her to go to the back with her, and which once again I love Liddy Leonard's commentary of Jon Moxley just has this spell over women.
The weird charisma.
What notes was he getting from Gabe of Mox just has, it was almost Vince McMahon-esque of like, well, he's just got this charisma.
I'm surprised that Gabe didn't slide a note about like, his pheromones must be doing it, because that seems like something Gabe would fixate on, because it was a very weird note, and knowing Lenny that was a Gabe note,
Oh God, yes. As for the match, I will say I criticize the booking of the opening match because I don't understand why it happened. I do think Gabe needs to be applauded because BxB Hulk is not on the next 2 weekends of shows. Akira Tozawa, thinking about it in my mind, I think is on every show through mid-2013. And if he's not, it's every weekend but one. So with this win, Tozawa, and that's a great match, but with this win, Tozawa, I think between this and the Sami Callihan match and then the Austin Aries match, he goes 3-0 this weekend and now cements himself as one of the top Japanese talent for the DGUSA brand, replacing BxB Hulk essentially in that role. And then you also have in the main event scene, which I think it's fair to say, even though Hulk was champion, I don't really feel like he was ever looked at as like the main eventer of the promotion. I think that person was Shingo. Right. As we've talked about, Shingo was gone until WrestleMania weekend. Well, who do they bring in to have, he's not exactly Japanese talent, but he's not an American talent. I think he was looked at as a special attraction. Who do you have there? It's PAC. So in that sense, the fact that Tozawa and PAC were the 2 biggest winners of the weekend, and they're replacing Hulk and Shingo, who are not seen for quite some time, I think Gabe nailed it in that aspect. And this is, it's a beautiful match. Mike, what do you think of this match?
I thought that this was the biggest match win of his career, of Tozawa's career at this point. Like he did beat El Generico in Battle Los Angeles. This was, I believe, was this before or after DDT4?
This is, oh God, you're gonna put me on the spot.
Sorry, but
yes, I'll look it up. Yes,
but like this is, at least in a Dragon Gate ring, this was the biggest match win of his career, because Hulk, even like with like being the DGUSA champion, who was often booked third on the card or in openers, and in some places as well, was still treated as the guy, and he still was someone of really high standing in Japan. So this is Akira Tozawa's first win against one of his major career rivals here. And it's just something that you could see his confidence in this era with peak era Hulk at this time. And it just was like an exceptional, it just was a blast. And like there's even like a moment like where Hulk's going to go for his springboard spinning heel kick that he kind of, he slips up on the ropes, and maybe he's afraid of the how low the ceiling is. And he did, like, he turned it kind of into like a springboard Thez press, and then Lenny Leonard did a tremendous save here, talking about, that must have gotten the sternum and knocked all the air out of him. And then it turned into like a really stiff match, which really is kind of the Tozawa specialty, is the idea that you have to kill Tozawa with fire to beat him. And he ate everything. He had like a moment where there was a first flash that went into a Shining Wizard. Probably had the first ever Destino in this match getting out of EVO. and just like a great match. It is one of those matches that it's a shame that I don't think this thing is up on the DGUSA YouTube, but it's really worth watching. And if you're someone like that like sees me tweet about Tozawa in these very like reverent terms and like how much I consider him my guy, like to the extent of I'm looking in my office case and I have a t-shirt that's signed by both Akira Tozawa and Ricochet. Like I'm that level of a Tozawa super fan. This is like a match like you watch and you say like, this is a guy who was already learning so much and was already had level potential, but he's able to put it not only on like the stage, the idea of pay-per-view, but he's putting it in front of the people that basically sent him to America to see what he had. And if anything else, he pretty much stepped forward and, you know, this changes probably both like how the remainder of his run in Dragon Gate USA is, and probably, you know, changes that level of confidence here that he did it in front of some of his biggest detractors. So it's just a tremendous match, and it's easily my blow-away match of the night.
To answer your question, DDT 4 is at the beginning of March, so we have not hit that point yet. So between the Kevin Steen match at the end of December that we talked about a few weeks ago and this weekend, he's splitting time between ACW Anarchy Championship Wrestling in Texas and St. Louis Anarchy in Southern Illinois and St. Louis. At an ACW show in January, Tozawa wrestled the Australian Dingo in a singles match. And then a month after this show, February 21st, 2011, it is ACH and Akira Tozawa against the Submission Squad of Davey Vega and Gary J at an ACW show in a match that I really want to see.
Is that match at the Mohawk? Can you see if it's at...
It is at Hooligans in Live Oak, Texas.
Okay, because I was going to say, like, they used to have, like, ACW used to run shows at the Mohawk, which is a
really cool venue.
Yeah, really cool venue where they do the ring outside, and it's in Austin, so it's gross and hot, but it's really cool. So, yeah, no, this is just, like, this is, like, why we do this series, is to rewatch matches like this that I completely forget about, and I'm like, holy shit, this match was incredible.
Yeah, then, really, really good.
And then we had a Homicide and Moxley recap, and Jimmy Jacobs came out because Austin Aries was coming out for a match, and then he asked Austin Aries for help against them, and he said, well, I don't want to follow up on that match, so sure, yeah. And Dave makes a note in the Observer Report about how this felt like a very WWE Raw thing, and it's like, if only Raw was like this nowadays, like that. And then Moxley comes out for some reason, and he talks about putting Yamato into it, so now it's 3 versus 4. But as he comes out with Reby Sky, Homicide attacks him. And then we start the no DQ match with Homicide and Jon Moxley, in case I know you have some opinions on this, so take it away.
Well, it should be noted that the Mox and Homicide video package that plays, they show highlights of them in this arena at Evolve 7, which is up to this point the biggest crossover that Evolve and Dragon Gate USA had at this point. Because even though they're both being booked by Gabe, but they're not the one WWN family at this point. They're two different universes, different entities, different promotions. So we get the first sign of any sort of Evolve, I guess, unity with that. And then Aries comes out to the ring, and I guess because I don't see it in Gabe's notes anywhere, and there would be times where he would update, you know, a Saturday morning after a Friday show, you know, oh, this happened, so this is going to happen on the card now. There was none of that, so I'm guessing it was Mystery Vortex style a few years before Mystery Vortex was a thing. I'm guessing it was Mystery Vortex style, and Aries was going to have an unannounced opponent, but we never got that because Jacobs came out, and then, as you said, you know, ran down that. Mox, for some reason, comes out and says Yamato will team with them too. And then Homicide comes out and attacks Jon Moxley in a no DQ match in which they brawl around the ring forever. It's not good. The fans can't see. Lenny Leonard can't see because they're brawling in the corner of a small arena where there's no elevation anywhere. And then Reby Sky comes out, turns on Jon Moxley, low blows him. It leads to the question, why was Reby Sky booked this weekend? What did she add to these shows? On top of that, her low blow got no reaction whatsoever. It was uncomfortably quiet in the Ace Arena up to that point. The one positive of this match is that shortly after that, Homicide does what I would dub a Davey Richards dive.
I had that written in my notes.
Over the barricade, into the crowd. That looked great, but even that got no reaction. This was still heatless. And then right as Homicide is starting to put Moxley away, he lays down, drapes Jon Moxley's arm over himself, and gets counted for 3. And what I think is one of the dumbest finishes I have ever seen. It makes no sense. After the match, Homicide hits him with an ace crusher and then starts to leave, but is really just going to get a pair of scissors, and then brings the scissors into the ring, tries to cut Jon Moxley's tongue out, but Akira Tozawa makes the save. I didn't understand any of this. I thought going into this weekend, Homicide versus Rich Swann would likely be the worst match in this promotion's history. But after watching this, and especially the finish, I mean, this is a bad walk-in brawl between an out-of-shape and aging Homicide with a charismatic Jon Moxley. But the finish of this match gives this a dud. It is the worst match in the history of the promotion. It was a waste of time, and I still don't understand what the finish was trying to accomplish at all.
And it's just not that it doesn't accomplish things. Like, Case, the two of us, we've done probably as much research as I would say anyone has put into Dragon Gate USA.
I would hope so.
I would hope so. For the amount of time I've placed, I would actually take credit for that. There's absolutely zero reason for why Homicide would do this. Was he afraid that him taking out the scissors would DQ him? But he already says he doesn't care about the match.
And it's a no-rules match.
Yeah, it's a no-rules match. It was just completely fucking dumb. The match,
it was finger poke of doom levels dumb. It was that bad.
It was that bad. The Davey, I did say though, the really sweet Davey Tope was rad. That did own. That was something that was actually cool to see. But it just was like, it was a terrible match. It was a match that made me reassess why Jon Moxley was in this promotion. Because it was so divorced on what was, like, in this hour, you had one of the best singles matches that's happened in the post-Shingo era. Probably the best singles match in the post-Shingo era in this promotion, I would say. And then you would have this, which is worse than anything that happened over WrestleMania weekend with Jack Evans, Teddy Hart, and all of them. Like, this was just bad. It was awkward. The crowd was dead. There was a weird line where Moxley talked about showing him what a Cincinnati lariat was, and it just was awkward. And, like, I feel for everyone who was watching this. I feel for Lenny Leonard and Leonard F. Chakarson having to call this thing, because it's like, what do you do here? And no wonder they went silent. I would have gone silent there, other than knowing that if I said this is terrible while I'm watching this, I get fired. This is a cardinal sin. This is an absolute cardinal sin, because this match killed the crowd, killed the pay-per-view, killed something that you're trying to get people into the promotion that's not in good stakes here. Homicide is out of the promotion after this. So, like, what was the purpose of this? What was the purpose of bringing in Homicide when it does not seem like he contributed anything to the box office? Made your top American star get sludged around with this for an entire weekend, where he just kind of I'm sitting here pulling my hair out, Case. Like, why the fuck did this happen?
It's again, there had to have been something better for Moxley to do. I mean, you had so much new talent introduced on the show. Have Mox just maim one of the new guys. Just eat him alive instead.
Rex Reed.
Because as you point out, it's not like Homicide drew any houses. He's on the smallest show in DGUSA history here because of the building they ran, but the October shows that he was on were looked at as box office disappointments, and those weekends were largely booked around him appearing. So it's not like he drew a house. He had the abysmal match with Rich Swann, which, now that I think about it, maybe Swann's just being booked horribly, because he had that match and then the Brody match tonight that didn't make any sense. And then this was as bad of a match as I've seen, because it's, at best it's a boring walk-in brawl. But again, the only way I can describe it is a finish that is finger poke doom levels of bad. And Mike, I don't know if you've thought about this at all or not, but it's not like Jon Moxley has that long of a shelf life left in this promotion. Okay,
No.
We are winding down the career of Jon Moxley in Dragon Gate USA, and given what occurs later on this show, why Moxley was booked so weak in this match, I am failing to see the point of any of this. It was just awful. It was a terrible match, a terrible segment, a bad post-match angle. The scissors thing in wrestling I don't like. It's just, I don't know. It's almost too real for me, even though the spots often look fake. It's like, I've hurt myself with scissors. I don't want to see anybody, like, I know that hurts. Like, I don't want to see somebody's tongue get cut out. That's dumb. I just want to see two guys wrestle, and Jon Moxley versus Homicide was not that.
It's just, I can't even wrap my head around the idea of how does Moxley look good out of this? He doesn't get a definitive win. He gets a fucking finger poke of doom, and then he gets attacked by a guy on the way out. Like, what's the purpose of it? Nothing.
Did you notice that they cut Homicide's promo from the DVD? Because Homicide is asking for a mic and gets it as they cut to the back.
I was so frustrated, and I was more happy that they went to the back here. But no, I did not notice that. I'll be interested. If anyone who was live at this show, drop into our DMs. Look, I want to know what Homicide said here. Like, something had to happen. It's
the whole thing is confusing because, again, like, Reby Sky's in this match too, and maybe I'm devaluing Miss Howard Stern and being a Playboy Playmate in 2010, but what was she adding to these cards to a point? Like, she was pushed really heavily in Gabe's Newswires up to this point.
I remember, like, the time of the show, like, her being all over everything. Like, tweets that have all been erased since now, thanks, Gabe. Like, we're all about her. Videos were all about her.
And it's like, this might sound problematic. It's not supposed to, though. But it's not like they couldn't have found a woman in New York City to hang out with Jon Moxley for the entire weekend. Like, why they needed her in particular to... I mean, the Homicide thing, it is a historically bad string of booking decisions, because you look at the Jon Moxley match on the Friday show in New York, where he's attacked by Julius Smokes, who was just mysteriously in the building, which took away from that match, which is a shame because I liked that match, but there was too much happening, him and Jigsaw. You have the thing in Philly where the fans and Homicide's crew are running into the ring to attack Jon Moxley, but it dies a painful death because it's the ECW arena and they aren't dumb enough to buy into that angle, and they are too jaded to give that angle even the appropriate reaction. They don't want to play nice with that angle, and I don't blame them. And then you have this match here. So Homicide's time in Dragon Gate USA can only be looked at as a failure. It is a historically bad run in the promotion through only 5 appearances.
Yeah, it's a cardinal sin of the promotion because it ruins several shows.
I wholeheartedly agree.
All right, after that, we had a WWN Live promo, which will be coming very soon. And then we had a match that did not make the pay-per-view for good reason. It was Rex Reed versus Pinky Sanchez. Rex Reed won with like a torture rack lung blower in like 5 minutes. It was just ugh.
CM Punk's favorite wrestler, Pinky Sanchez. I think I will mention that on every show he's on. I am very curious to see how I feel about Pinky Sanchez by the time this project is done, because honestly, like, he's not like the stuff that I have seen from him, which is most 2011 Dragon Gate USA shows. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. But I also, it's been a few years since I've seen these shows. My taste and my patience levels have drastically changed since then. So I'm not sure how it's going to hold up. I do know this is the last we see of Rex Reed, and I'm okay with that. Again, he's honestly fine as an undercard, just
Card
because
filler.
of his size. I would say like Akibono-esque position on the card, but he looks like shit. His gear looks like shit, and it just detracts from the fine, again, card filler role that he could have had. The fact that, again, Brody Lee squashed Rich Swann on the show when Pinky Sanchez is on this card. I do not understand that, but I rest my case.
It's just confounding. It's just incredibly confusing. And then we had it started off as looked like it was going to be a 4-on-3 match. This was the Blood Warriors team of Shima, Naruki Doi, Ricochet, and Dragon Kid defeating Jimmy Jacobs, Austin Aries, Yamato, and Sami Callihan, who ran in at the exact last moment because he wanted in. The finish was Naruki Doi hitting the Bakatara sliding kick on Jimmy Jacobs in 24 minutes and 29 seconds. And we've said this a lot on this series, so I kind of trying to pull back a little bit from it, but there's no better time of this. This was a Road to Korakuen main event.
It's a really strange match. I think there's a great match that these 8 men are capable of, but like I talked about at the top of the show, they literally did not have the space to have a great match.
Yeah.
When you have 2 guys in the ring, 3 guys on each side of the apron, and guys trying to do dives, it's just not realistic in the Ace Arena. It was just impossible. And I felt like they kept on getting in each other's way in a way that Dragon Gate guys just don't do. Like, again, the level of expectation in Dragon Gate is perfection. And they were unable to be perfect in this match. And I think it is not because of the talent involved on the American side. It is because of the ring that they were forced to wrestle in. And it was just very strange. I did enjoy, and Mike, you can explain the history behind it, the very stiff and seemingly unpleasant interactions between Austin Aries and Naruki Doi. Why might that be?
Oh, it's because Naruki Doi was almost had his career ended by Austin Aries' tag team partner at that time, Roderick Strong. And Naruki Doi, as is known, is the hardest hitter in the company. Whenever he peppers you with slaps, he's not like he's not just doing motion, letting it fall through and make a noise. He is slapping the crap out of you. So there is like 6-year-old beef. Like if you want to do a beef history video of this, these two guys have some long lasting beef. But like the thing that got me at the start of it was Shima basically delighted in eating up Sami Callihan, and Sami hit him back, and then Shima looked confused on why is this guy hitting me back so hard.
Well, and that is another point I talked about, the PAC Shingo thing and the Tozawa Hulk thing. I just mentioned that Moxley's time in this company is not for long, and just in terms of obviously their relationship, but the way Sami Callihan cuts promos and his role in the company as maybe not the guy that is going to tour Japan, but the guy that is more the American-centric wrestler, Sami Callihan is on the path to replacing Jon Moxley. Now, I will mention really quick, if you want beef history videos of Dragon Gate, redcircle.com/openthevoicegate. If you want to hit the donation button there, maybe Mike and I could come up with something.
I have a dollar amount in mind that I think would be worth it for us to do a beef history video, and we will bring out the drama for these.
Yes, I'm just saying it's an option. It is just a paywalled option that you must be aware of, because you can donate to the show on our Red Circle page, Open the Voice Gate. You can just search Red Circle Open the Voice Gate, and you can make a donation there. Yes, this match was strange. I thought Yamato and Doi looked good in it because it's Yamato and Doi. There are spots in this match where like they all do a big submission spot in the middle of the ring, very kind of Chikara-esque, even if they're not all connected. They've all got submissions in. And like Callahan hits a wicked stretch muffler on Ricochet, just uses all of his body weight and Ricochet's lack of body weight and really takes control of him. And I thought that looked particularly vicious. But this match never really found a flow. I think the ring was just too small for them. And it was fine. It was 3.5 stars for me. I know there's a better version of this match out there, though.
I don't know how, but all three of us have a consensus. This was a 3.5 star match. It's something where like you had like some really effective Blood Warriors teamwork that would become kind of the trademark of what the Blood Warriors Junction 3 feud was. And if anything, this was a match I was like, all right, obviously this couldn't happen, but let's fast forward this match for like 4 months and put it in a better arena and with a better ring. And you probably would have something coming close to like a 4-star level match. Like,
oh, completely.
And then like you had like a really fun closing stretch. Like, if y'all haven't watched this show and you're still listening to this podcast, here's the thing about the Ace Arena. It is so small that there is probably about a yard between the ring and the guardrail. So for anyone doing any dive, if you're not doing it up the entranceway, you're doing it over the barrier. So Ricochet hit an insane flying space tornado drop over the like all this because he had to, because if you didn't, you would be eating it. And it's just like terrible venue and really brought down the match. It was also 25 minutes on a show that just had like a whole bunch of crap on it. So the crowd was not going to be super into it as well. Any last thoughts before we get into the main event?
No, I'll start with the main event. It's Chuck Taylor and Johnny Gargano versus the Open the Brave Gate champion PAC and the Open the Dream Gate champion Masato Yoshino in the conclusion of the Open the United Gate tournament to crown the first champions. And Mike, I was super disappointed by this match.
Yeah, and I remember at the time being so disappointed about the result as well, because the winners of this match were the World 1 team of PAC and Masato Yoshino in 17 minutes and 26 seconds, with PAC doing a bridging suplex hold on Johnny Gargano. And they did do one thing I thought was pretty smart here, and deciding that after all this, we can't go long. We can't really lay this out. Let's just do a sprint. And this was a sprint, but this was a sprint that, like, the venue hurts someone like PAC. PAC doing, like, second rope moves because he can't go up to the top for it. The lowest ever missile senton I think I've seen in my life from Masato Yoshino. And then even for, like, someone like Chuck Taylor has a great tope, especially for a guy his size. He didn't do it. And, like, they made it into, like, a way where you're just like, okay, like, what am I doing here? And then you have Ronin, which you've been desperate for. Like, if anything, the first 16 episodes should be a story about how desperate this promotion of great Japanese wrestlers needed an American star to kind of build it off of. If you want to compare it to, like, how New Japan really did well in Western expansion, they had people like Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks helping out that. This was their opportunity of making homegrown stars here, and Gabe decided to go with the safe hand. And I wonder what the world would have been if Ronin won this, because Chuck Taylor and Johnny Gargano are about to have one of the great indie tag runs that no one ever talks about. But they had to go with the safe hand. Totally understand that here. And it kind of cut the feet off of Ronin before they could really run.
I understand that point, and I think I agree with you, but I'm also just trying to put myself in the frame of mind of everything that the online community was saying at this point about how the DGUSA shows are too Americanized. Even at this point, they're saying there's not enough Japanese talent and that the Americans are being pushed too hard. And I just wonder on this weekend of, like, this is Ronin, like, these guys came together, they're the super American stable, like this and that. If having them win would have been a little too much. Now, I think in hindsight it says, no, give them the belts, they'll be fine. I understand the super champion thing of of Yoshino and PAC, now they hold so many titles. But I think Taylor and Gargano winning would have been the right call, but I understand the fear behind putting the belts on them at this point.
Yeah, like, there was a backlash going on that time, and totally understandable why there was a backlash, especially for people like myself, and I know I've talked to John Carroll about it, and they have kind of a similar opinion with me, that people wanted to see the Japanese wrestlers. And the problem is that Gabe was trying to book a promotion that was going to not just draw from that because of how expensive it was. And you kind of come to this huge central conundrum, right? What do you do here? How do you treat this thing? And you have basically another, like, year and a half where it's just like the Americans and, like, who are supposed to be your homegrown people don't ever look as strong as everyone else. Like, it's something that it takes forever for it to really feel like that this happens. Like, luckily later in 2011 we will start seeing, like, an elevation of a homegrown star, but it feels like that might have happened too late in my mind. And I wonder what that reality is. Like, I totally understand the other side of this question here, and I don't slight the logic now. It's a logic that I had for a while, but I wonder what the world could have been like in DGUSA if they decided to go differently with this.
There's an after-match promo with PAC and Yoshino that I found to be largely not irrelevant, but unimportant. But there is a promo to close out the DVD, and it's hidden at the very end of the show. The very end of the show, for some reason. Mike, did you catch this promo, or did you turn off your show like a normal person and not see it?
No, I watched this promo because I did look at the clock when I was like, okay, this match is ending up. Like, we have 8 minutes. Well, I guess I'm watching through this, and then I saw, like, it was like PAC doing a very wholesome promo talking about how Yoshino is his good friend and Yoshino loves New Jersey, which I wonder if he really does love New Jersey.
I know enough about Masato Yoshino to say that he does not love New Jersey.
He does not like New Jersey. I don't think PAC really did either, to be honest. But then you had all this time left, and the backstage promo is a Kamikaze USA promo, and Moxley and Yamato are having, like, they're talking about having a bad time. It was not a good weekend for them. They're trying to, like, rebuild this, and they start yelling at Tozawa. They start yelling at Tozawa to get ready for the promo, and Moxley and Tozawa get into it. Tozawa basically says in Japanese that, and weirdly translated Japanese that didn't get kamikaze spelled right, by the way. Saying,
I did not notice that.
Oh yeah, it ended it with an I, not an E. Where they said like, oh, what's this guy? He's used to us in Japan. This guy just talks. He says what he wants, but what use is him here? Let's leave him. And instead, Jon Moxley and Yamato turn on Akira Tozawa and beat him down. Yamato tries to attack him with a piece of luggage, which was really amusing. And then they kick him out of Kamikaze USA. And it's something that they had to do, you know?
It's something that they had to do, but not on the last 3 minutes of a DVD and a backstage promo. I have no issue with the angle. It came across well. Why here? Why now? There's still 3 more shows that Moxley is on, and Tozawa's not going anywhere. I understand wanting to set him free, wanting to have some sort of a Tozawa-Moxley blow-off. I get it. Why in this spot? Why not in front of fans? Like, I didn't understand this. It was another thing on this show where it felt like the DGUSA of 2013, 2014, where things are just chaotic and you scratch your head at the booking and the matches don't deliver the way you think they should because, Yoshino and PAC and Taylor and Gargano, they had really, really good matches leading up to this. And then their match didn't deliver. The 8-man wasn't quite right. This was a frustrating show. And I think top to bottom, the weakest show up to this point.
It's just, you put this on pay-per-view after you have a lot of this stuff in the can for a while, and you decide to put this show, unless you had the agreement that it had to be this show. You had a whole weekend of things that you could have put together and built up the tournament across a weekend rather than just seeing a tournament final divorced from reality. And you could have made a 2.5-hour show that was great out of this weekend. That could have been
I was so delightfully surprised by New York and Philly. I came in with, medium expectations for those shows. And I mean, again, the Philly main event's one of the best matches in the promotion's history. And I thought New York was a really, really fun show. And then this one, Hulk Tozawa is a brilliant match and one that should be watched. And everything else on this show is skippable.
It's something. And it's something that I knew there would be a problem. And I remembered back there being a problem that, like, you'd have, like, these fun shows that were on pay-per-view, and then you'd have trash on pay-per-view. And I didn't realize it was this stark of a difference.
Yeah, so those are our thoughts on United Finale. The next episode, unless you got something else.
No, I was going to say, we have some stuff that we could talk about that will get us in a lot better place, though.
Yes, so the next DGUSA show is Open the Southern Gate, which kicks off the WrestleMania weekend triple shot.
Hell yeah.
But that
in my neck of the woods.
And Mike Spears' territory, that show takes place at the beginning of April, though. So there's a ton of stuff that happens in Japan leading up to that point that will be discussed, I think, throughout the next 3 shows we do. But it was important for us to mention what's going on in Japan because I think canonically it lines up a little bit more with DGUSA in 2011 than it does any other year.
Right.
And to take us to the end of February, which there wasn't a ton of shows that aired in February, it's really only 2 shows that matter. And one of those shows is the February 6th show from Fukuoka, Japan, Hakata Star Lanes. And specifically, the important matches on this show, which are the Open the Brave Gate title match. It is PAC defending the title against Naoki Tanizaki. If you saw a GIF from me in recent weeks, it was me tweeting out this match where PAC gives a top rope Hurricane Rana to Tanizaki to the floor in this match, which is one of the many crazy bumps that occur. And then an Open the Twin Gate match where Genki Horiguchi and Ryo Saito challenge Don Fuji and Masaki Mochizuki for the Open the Twin Gate titles. Mike, when I mention these 2 matches, what comes to mind?
Well, PAC versus Tanayan is one of the low-key great matches of this year. Like, in a year that has great stuff, it's an insane match case. Like, rewatching that match, like, what would you give it?
I gave it 4.25 on rewatch.
It's 4.25, but it's not. If my memory is right, it's been a while since I watched this match. There's like no stalling in this match. It's just insane.
No, it's 17 minutes. I rewatched most of what we're about to talk about before we recorded. I believe I believe this match is in full when it airs. If not, only a minute or two gets clipped off. We get most of this match and then the entire main event. And it is... Tanizaki is someone that I really miss in Dragon Gate.
Yeah.
He wasn't someone that always needed to be pushed because he wasn't a world-class worker. Like, he's just not on the level of most of his contemporaries.
He's like Kagetora.
But I think he's a better version of Kagetora because exactly when he gets that moment in the spotlight, when it is him and his moment matters, he delivers the entire time. I mean, his signature matches, his Bravegate defense against Kagetora in 2009. There are people that look at that Tanizaki Kagetora match as one of the best matches in Dragon Gate history, quite honestly. I mean, there are people that love that match. And Tanizaki's a guy who, when he needed to bring it, he could absolutely bring it.
Yeah, he was something special. I'm looking at this card right now, Case. You did forget to mention the 2-on-1 handicap match of Brody Lee defeating Katoka and Super Shenlong.
I would book that at any venue in the world today.
Give it exactly 3 minutes, 51 seconds like this.
I would bring Kotoka. Actually, I don't need to bring Kotoka out of retirement. I'll use Oji Shiba, his brother, instead. And then,
bless his heart.
Problem Dragon under the Super Shenlong mask, and I will bring them around the globe and have Brody Lee destroy them with ease.
What a great match too, you know?
Yes, no, just so much fun. And then there's the Open the Twin Gate title match, which here is where I was talking with Mike about this. This show is on. I don't know why this show, I had uploaded it to YouTube years ago, but it's on my YouTube unlisted. The link to PAC Tanizaki and Horiguchi and Saito versus Mochi Fuji is in the show description. Use that link wisely. Do not get my YouTube account suspended. But I want people to see these matches because Horiguchi and Saito versus Mochi Fuji especially is a hidden gem, a long lost gem, forgotten greatness, whatever superlatives you want to throw at it. I gave this match 4 3/4. I know Alan Forel is a 5-star proponent of this match. It is a brilliant tag team wrestling match that for some reason is underappreciated in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I mean, you look at it and you have Muraha Isapa winning the titles, and it's something that I think that people, and especially newcomers, and it's not to slight them, you're not used to like how heel Genki Horiguchi and heel Ryo Saito were. Like,
yes.
They were like tremendous heels, especially Ryo Saito. Ryo Saito is one of the more underrated heels in the company's history. And then you have Mochi Fuji, which, like, I mean, it's the dads, and everyone loves the dads. But I think like now we're like to the point of loving them. That's like this. But I mean, like they're two of the meanest MFers in the company's history, and it just like having this match, like Hakata Sarlanes, they say that it had 2350 here. Probably it was close to 2,000 because this was like an insane episode of Infinity. Like, I'm looking up and down this card, and I do remember this tag match. This tag match, like my thoughts about it. This would be, and doing a real cowards thing, this would be a 4 4/7 match for me. Real coward shit for me.
It is stunningly good. I hadn't seen the match in a few years. Finally went back and rewatched it. And I was just blown away at stuff, just psychology stuff that people are going to disregard because of the pace it's worked at. But psychology stuff that is just next level professional wrestling. There is just no one in the world doing what they did in this match.
If I'm right, there's like a tremendously long heat segment in this match.
There's a ton of selling going on. It's crazy heated. The finishing stretch when you factor in, big match Fuji, big match Mochizuki, and backslide from heaven Horiguchi, like there's just a ton of factors at play that just make this match feel different. It's just a different kind of match.
This entire show, looking at it, like I don't know what this clip was not. You also have the Blood Warriors trio of Shima, Doi, and Ricochet defeating BxB Hulk, Kness, and Masato Yoshino.
And that airs on a different episode of Infinity.
I mean, that's how they chop things up that day. Kenichiro Arai versus Sumo Yokosuka, I could probably live without that one.
That's a 15-minute Arai match. I'm surprised you're not all about that.
Arai at this time, though?
Yeah, that's fair.
That's fair. And then
that's fair.
The aforementioned handicap match, and then you had the opener, which was Kamikaze of Cyberkong, Kagetora, and Yamato losing to Dragon Kid, Gamma, and Yasushi Kanda. That's a match I could probably do without. I'm fair. I'm willing to say this. And of course, it's a time that like Shingo Takagi was out with his shoulder injury. So
yes. So
bicep.
The other show worth mentioning in the string of shows, this kind of takes us to the beginning of March, which will have a lot of stuff to talk about regarding just Japan in March 2011 on the next episode. But February 10th, 2011, Korakuen Hall. I will run down the full card real quick. It is Tanizaki, Saito, and Horiguchi defeating Super Shenlong, Kotoka, and the future T-Hawk in the opener.
I see you sidestepping me. What my mistake was always with that name.
Oh, no, I'm not even going to attempt to say that. Oh, why would I do that? Yasushi Kanda defeated Cyber Kong in a 12-minute singles match. We do not need that anywhere. PAC teamed up with Super Shisa. They defeated Dragon Kid and Ricochet in a match that is really, really fun. And there are some hidden Super Shisa gems in 2011. Don Fuji and Arakin defeated Yamato and Kagatora. A number one contenders match, Masaki Mochizuki defeated Brody Lee in a match that I rewatched and was blown away by. It felt like watching Hansen versus Kawada, but in a Dragon Gate ring. And it made me think a lot about Brody Lee and how big he could have been in Japan, how misused he was in America, both on the indies and then for nearly a decade in WWE. It is so frustrating to think about. And then finally, the main event, PAC contra PAC. Shima, Doi, and Gamma defeated Yoshino, Hulk, and Susumu Yokosuka. We can explain the stipulation behind that in just a second. But Mike, your memories of this show?
Like, that opened the Dream Gate number one contendership match. Might have been, at that time, with the exception of some of the stuff he was doing in Chikara, the best match of Brady Lee's career at that point.
I had seen it before, didn't have a super strong memory of it, watched it today, was blown away at just how good it was.
Yeah, and it makes sense that you said, like, Hansen versus Kawada. I mean, you have a Koji Katao student versus someone who, like, openly, like, his name was, like, yeah, Brody Lee was also a reference to Jason Lee's character from,
Mallrats, I believe.
Mallrats, yeah. I've tried to erase Kevin Smith from my brain. But,
Oh, okay, all right.
I spent way too much time of my life watching Kevin Smith stand-up DVDs.
Big Jason Lee guy, though. Although he is a Scientologist, My Name is Earl is one of my favorite shows of all time.
So, quick sidebar. I've gotten really into celebrity blind items over the last few weeks. And
what is that?
Oh, it's like celebrity rumors that don't get published anywhere else.
Gotcha.
That often come out to be true, and it's usually like really like seedy stuff. To be honest, if you're someone like me who watches like trash TV, it's right up your alley. There's this guy who is like, if you ever and listen to my hear this, Crazy Days and Nights is like this blog of like this Hollywood entertainment lawyer who does stuff. Talks about how Jason Lee's trying to leave Scientology right now, and Scientology might let him walk. So you might not have to have that reservation on Jason Lee much longer.
Well, Jason Lee's a fascinating person. He's a brilliant photographer who seems to be living a very happy life with his family right now, and also a crazy influential skateboarder. He grew up with Ed Templeton, who went on to found Toy Machine Skateboards. Ed Templeton is my favorite artist, my favorite photographer, one of my favorite skateboarders, huge personal influence on me. And in the early 90s, when Ed Templeton was at the top of his game, he's doing most of his innovative stuff with Jason Lee by his side, which is crazy. And then, Lee's at Mallrats, and then, like I said, My Name is Earl is one of my favorite shows ever. I am so disappointed we never got a fitting conclusion of that show. It was canceled on a massive cliffhanger. But yeah, just Jason Lee, mad respect, and thank you, Brody Lee, for giving him a rightful tribute in the professional wrestling industry.
But yeah, that was my sidebar. So let's talk about PAC contra PAC.
Yeah, do you want to break that down for me?
Oh, jeez, it was like, like the big thing about this was, and I don't have like the full notes about this in front of me, but Shima had
I do, so do your best. I'll fill in the blanks.
All right, Shima was obsessed with PAC, like had an obsession with him. And was like, oh, you need to join me. But everyone was like, no, he's World 1. And then they set this up. I remember us talking about this in a previous episode, that like membership with PAC, which is a thing that like happens a lot. Like the most recent one was the membership of Mondai Ryu, or it was like the Berserk versus Overgeneration match where like losers gets to pick someone. And it was kind of like building into the thing. Like Naruki Doi was like, oh no, we want PAC as well. Of course, BxB Hulk and Masato Yoshino were like, no, he's our bro. And it kind of like ended like this was like one of the big first like Blood Warriors, like claiming people, turning people, kicking people matches.
Yes. So Blood Warriors wins the match, and they get the rights to have PAC join Blood Warriors But then Ricochet says he doesn't like Pac. Ricochet is the best high flyer in the world. So Shima, as it says in the translation, Shima, for whatever reason, left the decision up to Pac. Pac said his heart belonged to World 1, that he didn't want to join Blood Warriors. Shima said okay, despite the stipulations for the main event. He then asked Ricochet if he had anything else to say, and Ricochet made a challenge to the Open the Brave Gate title that Pac held, and they agreed to do it next month at Korakuen. And then, so we get a main event with a stipulation that ended up meaning nothing, but that's
Happens a lot. Happens a lot.
It's part of the song and dance here. Shima then turned to Susumu. He had a challenge for Kaneska, but since Kaneska was injured, Susumu could choose his partner. He had opponents for them, calling out Taka Michinoku and Nozawa Wrong Guy, Nozawa out of the question, as new Blood Warriors assistants. They exchanged words with Susumu, who chose, in the end, BxB Hulk as his partner. The former veteran army came out at this point, and Mochizuki argued with Taka. In the end, Mochizuki and Ariken threw themselves into the mix, making it a three-way tag for next month. Hulk and Yokosuka versus Mochizuki and Ariken versus Taka Michinoku and Nozawa Wrong Guy. Now, Mike...
Oh, yeah. I got thoughts.
I had zero memory of Taka being a Blood Warriors assistant.
So there's a good reason why, and we'll get into that next episode. But
well,
yeah,
we can go. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, we'll talk about it now. The next episode's going to cover the events that happened during 3/11/2011, which was the terrible monsoon and the nuclear collapse of the Fukushima nuclear plant that completely changed Japan from that point on. And a lot of these matches, this was announced for Sumo Hall, right?
This was Korakuen the next month. This was March Korakuen, so 3-1.
So yeah, this match would happen, but
yes, with one of the participants being different, which we'll get into in just a second.
Which we'll get into it in a second. There's a lot of things that happen here, but yeah, Nosawa Wrong Guy. Yeah, no, it made sense. Like if you look at Nosawa Bombay shows and Tokyo Carnival shows, big relationship there, and then like Shima and Taka Michinoku have had like this long love-hate relationship their entire careers. Dating.
It's uncomfortable. It's just weird, their relationship with one another.
Yeah, it starts when Crazy Max basically replaced Kaintai DX and Michinoku Pro as like the big heel unit because, you know, they basically were going to die without having infusion there. And one of the big things that happened was that Shima somehow stole Taka Michinoku's driver's license, his passport. I think it was like his personal ID, and then also his stamp, which is a big thing in Japan because you have to use your stamp for like all like important government documents. Everyone has a stamp with their name in like traditional kanji. Did you know that?
Yes, I did.
And he set them on fire. And that became like a point of like emphasis about them throughout the rest of her career. Like, this happened like in 1998. So 2011, they're on good terms. There's like other mentions that Taka Michinoku wants to always burn Shima's passport as a receipt. And it's just like a real weird dichotomy that like after Strong Hearts split, nothing's really happened since then because it seems like that's between those two. I don't know if there's any personal animus, and I believe that whole story there was like a big storyline, but there does seem to be like a very uncomfortable air whenever Taka Michinoku is around.
Well, and there's, I think it's forgotten about, partially because the matches aren't great, but Taka Michinoku, you know, he headlines Kobe World 2005 against Masaki Mochizuki, but there's K-Dojo guys on almost every Dragon Gate Korakuen Hall show that year, and then there's a lot of Dragon Gate participation in K-Dojo shows in 2005, right. And then, you know, Taka disappears for a little bit and then comes back like always, and the web of Taka, Shima, just weirdness is so strange, and they always seem to have the weirdest, likely ego-driven relationship there could be.
Yeah.
So, you know, the match was supposed to be Hulk Yokosuka versus Mochizuki and Ariken versus Taka and Nozawa out of the question, but that would not happen as February 19th it is announced that Nozawa Wrong Guy has been removed from the March 1st Korakuen show due to his arrest. He was arrested for allegedly stealing a taxi. He had no driver's license. To make things worse, he was probably very drunk. He claimed innocence naturally, and a replacement has not been announced, but I will say now we will break down the March 1st Korakuen in detail on the next show, but the replacement for Taka Michinoku was Minoru Fujita.
Yeah, so this isn't the big Nosawa Wrong Guy arrest that everyone knows about. But yeah, no, like this was like a time period where he was doing like a lot of All Japan, and he was like Black Tiger, and he was like a Black Tiger, I think, at this time as well. And he stole, it was like out with sponsors. It was like I'm remembering this from memory, so I might be wrong, and if I am, I apologize, but this is just a crazy story. He gets drunk, and I think like the taxi driver wasn't driving to where he wants to, so he took over the taxi cab and drove drunk and was arrested. Like, Nosawa being Nosawa. These are Nosawa things.
No, just Nosawa things.
Yeah. So yeah, no. Well, when you brought this up earlier, I was like, oh wait, what happened there? I was like, oh yeah, no, this did happen. And then it all like started flashing back, and I was like, I think I immediately responded. Like, I paused for a second, and I was like, oh, this is when he got arrested for stealing a taxi cab, right? And lo and behold, it was the taxi cab.
So that brings us to everything that mattered in February in Dragon Gate. So when we resume, we will be opening the Southern Gate, talking about the life-changing events that occurred in Japan in March of 2011, as well as Ronin's first tour of Japan. We've got that, and then I will run down the Southern Gate card real quick. We get John Davis versus Brody Lee in the opener, a breakout challenge semifinal match between Jimmy Rave, Lindsay Dorado, Sugar Dunkerton, and Kyle Matthews, Sami Callihan versus Rich Swann, another breakout challenge four-way match of Eric Cannon, Shima Zion, Facade, and AR Fox, Naruki Doi versus Jon Moxley, another Shima versus Johnny Gargano match, the breakout challenge finale, which I will not spoil the participants there, and then a stable shootout match, PAC and Ricochet against Akira Tozawa and Chuck Taylor. Mike, I am looking forward to opening the Southern Gate.
Oh, I mean, I'm going to probably, before we review the show, have to go to Cookout, traditional Carolinian fare, and then go check on to see how things are going with one of my alma maters, the Elon Phoenix, which are 5 minutes away from this arena. And, just get myself into the vibe. I'm ready for this one.
And that is all I have for this podcast. Mike is going to embrace his Southern roots. We'll see how that goes. We'll see if he wears a mask or not. It's the way it sounds like he's probably not gonna. And that is the end of this podcast as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, that's going to do us for this week's episode of Rewind and Rewatch. Case, do you have anything you wanted to plug before we get out of here?
Yes, donate to us so we could do beef history videos. redcircle.com/open the voice gate.
There's a link in the show notes every time. Yeah. So you could also find us on Twitter at Open Voice Gate, where we will retweet everything that we can about Dragon Gate news. If we're watching something live, we'll just post something there. Birthday wishes to people. We like to be like your one-stop shop of Dragon Gate English content. I would like to think, Case.
I would like to think so too.
Yep. And then you can find me on Twitter at Fujiheya. That's 2 eyes like Don Fuji, and Case at _in_your_case. But until next time, when we're going down south before Mania weekend, that's it for Open the Voice Gate. For Case, I'm Mike, and we'll catch you next time.